Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life by Design podcast. On this week's episode, I speak with Anna Murray. Anna has a background in psychology and 8 years' experience as a birth doula and gives a deep insight into the mindset work that is required to be able to fully surrender to birth and parenthood. One of Anna's biggest passions is guiding her clients through the shadow and positive mindset work in order to identify what truly stops them from having the mind-blowing birth experience they desire. Anna believes every couple has the right to feel empowered and supported during their birth experience, regardless of the type of birth that they have. She offers holistic in-person birth preparation classes in Byron and also online coaching for women ready to find the confidence to birth their baby within. In this week's episode, expect to learn about knowing your rights when it comes to birthing, how to navigate the system, trusting your intuition, understanding your rights and choices when it comes to birthing, and much, much more. Enjoy the episode. Anna Murray, welcome to the podcast.
So glad to be here.
Well, my friend, we are, at the time of recording anyway, we're very close to D-Day, and Shani and I feel a lot better about D-Day because of the day that we've spent with you not too long ago, and also just the little tips and tricks and support that you've given us along the way. So very much looking forward to tapping into all of that today. But before we get started, can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel of who you are and what's got you to where you are today?
Absolutely. So my background is in psychology, where I worked for a really, really long time before I birthed my 3 children, 3 boys. So it's pretty mad in my house. I am a highly experienced birth doula. So I help couples prepare and go through birth in a really empowered way. And I'm also a birth coach. So my work is all about mindset change, to let go of your fear and those common misbeliefs around birth that we all have, and empower you to feel really excited and confident about giving birth.
Do you know what's interesting about this? Let's just go straight in, because this
is
equal parts annoying and also exciting. The language that you use is in an empowered way. And what I find interesting, and because you've obviously got so many reps on the board, I'd be really interested in knowing how you see it. I don't birth, so it's not about me, but I didn't really feel any fear until we started navigating the system. And obviously there's been some complications, which it's been recommended that we go through the system. How much of this fear around pregnancy is a maybe innate piece within us, and how much of it's actually brought upon with the system, etc.? Because I'm glad we've got you, because it's helped us navigate. Every time there's a little bit of fear that's thrown towards us, we're like, oh, what would Anna do? And then we just ground ourselves. But how much of this is like biological, innate in us, and how much of it is actually kind of pushed on us by the system?
Yeah, such a great question. So much of our beliefs around birth are deeply stored in our subconscious mind for a number of reasons. The stories that we were told when we were little, when we grew up. Mum, oh God, your birth was horrible, and your sisters. Like, even those stories when we were little, or even going back before that, I really, truly, deeply believe that we pass that on through generations, our beliefs around birth and our fear around birth. And then even like when we move past the early childhood phase, all the stories that we just pick up along the way when we're not even thinking about birth because we're 12, 14, 16, 18 maybe. We pick it up in TV shows. Like, I specifically remember Friends, that show, that generation, when Rachel was screaming on her back, people were staring at her bits down there, and she was like in green plastic and lights everywhere. And I was laughing at the time because I wasn't into birth, but a little seed is planted in our subconscious mind that birth is scary. Yeah. And then all these stories, these random strangers at the cafe walking past you saying, oh, look at your big belly. I know that happened to you guys this week. All those random stories where we think, yeah, that's so silly. That is not our story. But bang, another little seed gets planted in your subconscious mind. And then all of a sudden you end up here with me, yeah, in my session. And you say to me, well, but I've never birthed before. Why am I scared of giving birth? I'm not even in the system. I'm planning a home birth. So you truly, absolutely can be scared of giving birth without ever having set foot in the system, just because all of those stories. So in a nutshell, your subconscious mind stores all the information that you hear over your lifetime, and it can't distinguish between real and imagined. So the story becomes your reality. There's your fear.
Well, something you said to me, obviously, in a text message last night, because Shani had an incident yesterday, I find fascinating. So we'll obviously have the most beautiful birth ever on planet Earth, naturally, because we've been prepping for it. And if for whatever reason it went in a different direction, I cannot get my head around the thought that either myself or Shani would go ahead and project our challenging birth story onto someone else. Like, and you sent me a really interesting message last night, which was, it gave me a view and a perspective that I hadn't considered. But why do you think people do that?
So it is so common for especially women to feel the need to pass on their traumatic, horrible birth stories. And I would love to do a PhD on that, actually. I think there are two reasons. The first reason is they had a traumatic birth story themselves, and they never had an opportunity, sadly, to properly debrief that and heal. And often that also means in general, in life, they don't work on themselves. They haven't had an opportunity to heal in life, and therefore have no awareness and project their story onto somebody else. Now, you just said earlier, Shani and I would never do that. Of course you wouldn't, because you have so much self-awareness. You've done the hard work. You are doing the ongoing work on yourself, and you therefore know you don't just project your own story onto other people. My second thought is why women do that. They almost feel the need to have that look at me hero status. Look at me, I survived. Look at me, I have a responsibility to save you from what's to come. That's the society we live in, right? And a lot of us live our lives like that, and which that's how it is. So yeah, which is sad, because their story has nothing to do with you. And I remember specifically when I was pregnant with my third, and I had two little boys on each side waiting at the bus stop, huge belly. And this random woman says to me, look at your belly. Oh, you're going to have a ginormous belly, a baby, and you're going to just tear in your birth. It's going to be awful. And I said, I'm sorry. Can I stop you right there? I'm so sorry to hear you had a negative birth story. I'm preparing for my own. Thank you. And she's like, oh, no, I have never given birth before. It's that need to educate the younger generation. So my tip for your listeners out there is, if anyone tries to tell you, oh, you beware, watch out what's coming, pause them right there and then. If that story is heading for something negative, I'm sorry, can I pause you right there? Because your subconscious mind can't distinguish between real and imagined.
I think what stands out to me, having seen so many little incidents over the last kind of 8 months, is a real lack of intentional language and awareness around what you're saying. And there's a really big difference for me between, oh, this is how birth is, and this was my experience. Like, that is the difference for me. I'm okay with you going, hey, this was my experience, if for whatever reason you feel like you need to share with us, which we probably don't want to hear negative birth stories. But that, at least there's a level of ownership and awareness that this isn't universal, how pregnancy, how birth happens, how parenting happens. And, I think if for whatever reason someone was to ask us post our pregnancy, our birth, how was that both of us would be really intentional of like, oh, this was our experience, as opposed to saying it with some kind of universal tone, as if there's only one way to do it. So yeah, it's been really interesting to observe that. I'm really interested in your points there, because I had Lael Stone on 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I asked her because at the time I was also getting a shitload of DMs about parenting, and I was saying to her, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Of all the topics I've ever spoken about, and there's been a lot more controversial topics, I thought, than parenting, and all of a sudden my inbox is flooded with unsolicited advice. And she gave some really interesting points around, similar to what you said, of there's a lot of women in particular that feel like they weren't seen, heard, or understood in their parenting or in their birth, and for that reason they're looking for those little opportunities to voice. But also her second point was really interesting, of like, if they can convince me of their style of parenting, then they have convinced themselves that their approach is the approach or the right approach. So there's a self-fulfilling prophecy that, oh, if I can convince someone else, then I must be doing the right thing. It's a fascinating space.
Can I comment on that, please? That is so brilliant, because I was just going to bring that up, actually. Everything that you're experiencing now, people having opinions on how your pregnancy and birth should unfold or will unfold, it's going to continue in parenthood. Yeah, everyone is going to have an opinion how you should be raising your daughter. And what you just said, you know, if they can convince you, then maybe they can convince themselves. This is such a huge part of the inner work we can already do leading up to our birth and parenthood. We can stop trying to find the confidence in our choices outside of ourselves, which is what you just mentioned. If I convince them and they say, yes, you are right, Blake, you are amazing, you are right, then I feel good about my choice and therefore I believe in it. That is the same as you prepare for your birth or parenthood. But when you find the confidence within you, you no longer need to convince others that this is the right way to birth or parent. Or you're also no longer, coming back to birth, you no longer need to convince the midwives or the doctors that, please, yes, you want to do that, because you have that confidence within yourself and you're no longer seeking approval from others.
That's wild. You know what's really interesting? Shani and I were really intentional probably about 18 months ago when we kind of started thinking about this, of like, okay, let's just observe how different people do different things from a parenting. And naturally we're going to, come about with our own approach. But I really wanted almost just to be able to find some people that we really admire in terms of the way that they do it. And, over the last kind of 18 months, I collected 9 sets of friends that I really like the way they do it. Interestingly, and you won't be surprised by this, they never reach out and give me advice unless I ask for it. It's always the ones giving me advice that I didn't ask for parenting advice, which I have no doubt that the irony in that as well.
That is possibly the smartest thing I've ever heard in preparation for parenthood. I wish someone had told me that 12 years ago, because that is just, if you have your tribe in parenthood and you feel like you're with like-minded people who respect your choices, and even if you don't share the same values, because you can never share everything, they respect your choices and they therefore don't give you that unwanted advice that makes life so much easier. Otherwise you feel really isolated.
I find this really interesting. I've been kind of navigating the back and forth in my head. There's a part of me that would really love to share our experience, and potentially my experience from a male point of view, because I don't see much of it online, at least, with the world that I'm in, and I'm sure I'll see more of it as it kind of comes to life. Is there a part of you that's challenged with how much you share, knowing that it's such a heated topic? Like, I have no doubt, and I'm just going to ignore it, I've come to that place, obviously, but I've no doubt that if and when I share certain things that there's going to be certain backlash, because you know how Shani and I think in terms of parenting, and it's going to be different to school of thought for many. But do you get backlash in terms of people with different opinions?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, especially because our life is quite unconventional. We have 3 boys, we homeschool them. Well, our oldest just started at a skate academy. So that itself, people are going to have an opinion. Where's he going to go in life? Going to a pro skate academy, and you homeschool the others. Oh my God, here you go. So I used to feel offended. I used to hold back from sharing because I was worried about being judged many, many years ago, but I thrive from that now. And I mean, look, that's very in line with my job, obviously. as a birth worker, as a birth doula, I constantly get challenged by people because either I challenge the couple in their beliefs and they're like, whoa, she didn't just say that. Or it's, if I bring something up when a doctor says, but you should be induced, you have to do this, and we're going to speed up your labor. And I speak up with my opinion that maybe is not so welcome. So, I thrive from confrontation. Ask my husband.
Yeah, I can imagine. I get that feeling. I had that sense with you when I spent a day with you that you'd go right in a little bit of a confrontation. So one of the things that, has been really helpful for us in grounding ourselves, for those that don't know, Shani was, I hate the word diagnosed, but I was trying to think of another word, with gestational diabetes. And for that reason, we were encouraged to go into the system. In hindsight, having had a few people reach out to us who also went through that, if we knew that we didn't kind of have to, we might have chosen to stay with the home birth, but we didn't know really at the time whether there was a better option. But now that we're dancing with the system, I was going to say in the system, but I won't, I'll say dancing with the system. What does that look like for you? Because, one of the things that has been really beneficial for us is you teaching us how to navigate the system. So for people that don't understand exactly what that means, what does it mean to navigate and quote unquote the system when it comes to birth?
So there's a really fine line between educating yourself and understanding your rights, your options, how to ask the right questions so you can make informed choices, and feeling scared and threatened by what you're finding out. Because, for me, it's always so important when I work with my clients for them to fully understand and be fully prepared for what's going to happen. I always say people working in the system, midwives, doctors, obstetricians, nurses, they don't mean to harm you. They're simply doing their job. And sadly, if you're birthing in a hospital setting where there are hundreds of people going through each day, you are sadly a number, and they have to do their job by ticking the boxes. So understanding what these boxes are, what they're going to suggest to you now that you are, you have gestational diabetes. So one of the things would be you might get thrown into the whole induction spiral. So understanding that that is going to happen. What are my rights? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are my alternatives? And the most important thing for everybody birthing in the system to understand is that you have options. They are not the police. You're not a 5-year-old child whose mother says, you can't have that lolly blade. No, you were a bad boy. For God's sake, they're just people doing their job. They're here to give you medical advice, make recommendations, and most importantly, they're trained to help you if there is a medical emergency, which is, if we look overall at numbers of women birthing each day, is unlikely. But thank God they're there to help you. In all other cases, which means the majority, they're just providing suggestions to you, and you can take them or you don't. Unless you educate yourself and you know what's to come, you're going to get thrown in the lions then. And that was me in my first birth. And you're like, oh my God, what happened here? There are 5 lions in me. I better do as I'm told because this is so freaking scary here. Oh my God, I'm going to get eaten alive. It doesn't have to be that way.
So indoctrination's a funny thing in whatever system you look at, because the indoctrination of well-intended people means that they don't know that they're doing harm often. Mm-hmm. What I find really interesting about the approach of quote unquote the system is the level of fear that they push onto you. And for me, I struggle to make sense of the nurse that's standing right in front of us, who clearly is just doing her job. I appreciate that. But can she not sense the fear that she's pushing onto us? Is she so indoctrinated into the way of doing things that she can't even critically think her way through what she's saying, and for that reason she's just pushing fear straight onto us? I'm amazed that they can't see the fear that they actually push onto their patients. I assume they either can't see it or they think the fear approach is well intended.
I asked myself that for a whole, I think, 8 or 9 years, as I was, there was a period where I was doing 2 births a month a lot of them in hospital settings. And I thought, you must be fucking kidding me. You didn't just say that. You didn't just pull out the dead baby card when there's not actually a risk right now happening. I cannot believe it. And it gave me sleepless nights. And then one day, it was only about a couple of years back, a beautiful midwife reached out to me and she said, do you remember me? I worked at a birth many, many years ago where you were the doula, and I was so blown away by you and how caring and patient and supportive you were. And she was a young student midwife back then. And she said, I had just the greatest hopes that I would be the most caring, beautiful, kindest midwife ever out there in the hospital system. And I said, well, what happened? She's like, well, I've actually since quit. So fast forward 5 years. She said, I've quit because I ended up being that midwife for a little while. And then I felt so pressured and so under the pump and so overwhelmed and constantly worried about losing my jobs. I actually forgot to notice that there are human beings with feelings out there. All I was worried about doing my checklist. And I didn't want to be one of those angry people who said all those nasty things. So I quit. And for me, that was a real eye opener because I thought, okay, maybe they didn't intentionally choose to be so awful and say those awful things. Maybe they're just in a constant state of overwhelm, in a constant state of my nervous system is up here, I can't function. And you know what it's like from a previous life. When you're not your best and your nervous system is not regulated and calm, you do and say things that you actually don't want to say. And I'm not making excuses for those people. I want to make that really clear. It's not okay. It's absolutely not okay ever. But I'm just trying to understand why people would do that and say those things.
If you keep people dysregulated enough and indoctrinated at the same time, you find a way to access, a certain part of the brain. It's really interesting. If I had my time again, I probably would have ripped this nurse to pieces. But I think I was kind of blown away. But she brought out the dead baby comment in our last meeting, and for whatever reason, I don't know if I was just shocked by what she said, but she said something along the lines of, if you'd like your baby to survive. And to say that to Shani, when naturally, unless you're a little bit of a fucking idiot, and I shouldn't probably say that, but I will, to know that our baby's picking up everything that she's saying, and we're in a meeting talking about if your baby's going to survive. If I had my time again, I definitely would have said something. I don't know if I was shocked, if I didn't comprehend what she was saying, but that type of language compared to going and spending a day with you, where we're mindful of the challenges, we're mindful of the potential that things could go pear-shaped, but we're also putting the majority of our time, energy and attention into a positive birth. You could not have more polar opposite approaches.
No. And oh, sorry to hear that. That's what was said to Shani. That is just, I'm always shocked, always lost for words every time I hear it. But I also do think it is really great practice for you guys to hear that complete bullshit. Because imagine if you go through the pregnancy and everything is dreamy and, oh yeah, the midwife was lovely. And then on the day of your birth in the system, you have a midwife, a nurse like that, who pulls out the dead baby card, and you go into shock as you're seeing your partner go through what you believe really intense pain. I mean, what are you going to do then? Are you going to be like, oh, what? No, we're good. You don't tell us about the baby. Most people naturally, you are only human, would go into, oh, wow, yeah, okay, all right, well, you do you know best, of course. So this is such great practice.
What do you think is, and I was going to ask you this in our catch up on Thursday, but seeing we're here, I might ask it now and help others. But I think the fear, the number one fear, and I remember you having specific language for this, so I'm sure you can access it quite easily. But I think the number one fear for me on the day is them trying to rush me into a decision that I don't want to make. E.g., the baby comes out and is a certain color or like that, and me not having enough, through their eyes potentially, time to assess options. So what's the language that you use when you're trying to assess, is this absolutely necessary for you to take the baby away or to do A, B, and C? And ideally, I'd probably have someone on speed dial going, is there another option? But what language can I use to really assess how serious this matter is, as opposed to are there different options, etc.?
That is the most commonly asked question I get, and I've taught hundreds of couples. So you are not alone with this concern. And so there are two scenarios. Okay, so the first one, which is unlikely, is that there is a real emergency. Okay, so if you're birthing in the system, which means anything other than a home birth or a free birth, you're birthing in the system and there's a real emergency, there will be a button on the wall. It's usually either green or it's red, and they will press that button. And I've seen that a couple of times over the years. And then the lights usually go on, the doors fling open, sometimes anything from 3 to 8 people, obstetrician, pediatrician, assistant, nurse, everybody comes rushing in to help you and your baby, your partner, okay? That's what they're trained to do. This is a real emergency. There is no time to ask questions. What are the benefits? What are the risks? There is no time. You will know if that happens, if they press that button, okay? If they don't press that button, there is no emergency. However, often staff use a language that suggests to you that it is emergency, such as, let me think of an example. Okay, if we don't speed up labor, we're seriously worried about doing an emergency cesarean here because your baby is not going to be safe. We want to have a live baby. Okay, in the same sentence, the person used emergency, cesarean, not alive. Concerns. Yeah, do it. This is language that is very commonly used, sadly, in a hospital, okay, without there being a real emergency. And in the situation I just described, there was no buzzer pressed. Nothing happened. It was just words. So they're the main things you want to look out for. Is anyone pressing a buzzer, or are they telling you what they're about to do? The amount of births I've supported where that kind of language was used, and my client decided in the end, you know what, actually, we've looked at the pros, we've looked at the cons, we've considered the alternatives, we're going to go with this decision, that feels good. And we were still waiting an hour, 2 hours later for the emergency cesarean. That is no emergency. So what I recommend you do is you ask yourself and the staff the following things. Okay, what are the benefits of that intervention? Yeah, no buzzer means you have time to ask questions. What are the benefits? What are the risks of that intervention? The second thing, is my baby at risk? Is my partner at risk right now? Not in 3 hours, in a week, right now. She's good? Baby's good? Cool. What are the alternatives? What else can we do to speed this birth up, or whatever the situation is? Okay. What comes next? Intuition. What's my intuition saying? Birthing mama's intuition is incredible. Okay. Check in with her. What's her intuition saying? And if there is no red button pressed, in the absence of an emergency, do nothing and for nothing and reassess. So that tool is called brain. Yeah, brain, like our brain. That's right. Like our brain. And if there's no button being pressed in the hospital room, that means you have time to ask questions. And then you're going to say, and I supported a beautiful couple 2 weeks ago where they had to use this multiple times, that tool. And the dad, he did so well. And the dad said, I would like to ask you some questions just away from my wife, please, because we want her to be in her bubble, in her birthing space. So he took the doctor away, and the doctor was quite rude and said, okay, what are the benefits, risk, alternative? I'm going to check in with her and we see what we do. And then he said, thank you so much. I'm going to go and check with my wife now, and we will let you know in 10 minutes what we'd like to do. And coming back to what you said about time, if there's an emergency, we don't have time to ask those questions. We don't have time to wait 10 minutes, but most likely it's not an emergency, and we can ask questions, and we can take those 10 minutes to, in your case, gently bring that up with Shani and say, darling, this is what's going on. What do you think?
For me, something that stands out off the back of what you said there, and it feels really common, you know, obviously in pregnancy, birth, parenting, but just the general nature of society, and in particular women, is just being pulled away from their intuition. What does that look like for a female to, Shani's excellent at it, but I've seen a lot of women kind of be disconnected from that. But if someone wanted to even start that process, let's say, you know, people are behind us and potentially looking to start pregnancy, or they're in their parenting, how do they start to kind of reconnect with that? Where would you suggest?
Love that question. So like you said, so many people have lost that connection because of the society that we live in. So I always say to my clients, start with the basics, okay? What that looks like. Ask yourself, do I need to eat? Am I hungry right now? I'm hungry. I should eat. Oh, I need to pee. Go and pee. You don't need to wait until you've done all the jobs and folded the washing. Go and pee, okay? Oh, I really don't want to go to that barbecue this afternoon. I'm tired. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. I don't want to go. I should be going. Don't go. Yeah, just with the little things. If you practice it every single day, it will become easier and feel natural in bigger situations, such as at the 12-week scan. We're concerned about this. You should be going down that path. Rather than just agreeing, you could say, I'm going to check in with myself. I'm going to sleep on it. I'm going to go home. I'm going to talk to my partner. I'll let you know in the next couple of days. And unless you manage to do that in everyday basic situations, how can you possibly decide to say no to an obstetrician who might bring up their baby cart? It's pretty hard to connect to your intuition if you're not in everyday moments.
So what recommendations would you have for, say, a couple who's birthing in the system, in terms of, like, what do they need to know in terms of packing, thoughts to have on the day, and even post birth as well?
Okay, so the first thing you need to know is that you are in charge. So if you believe that, the people in white coats decide how your birth is going to unfold, that's cool, because the majority of people believe that and want a birth like that. That's cool. But I assume that most of your listeners, and definitely
not us,
everyone,
my friend, not us,
not us, people who come to me, even if they don't want to admit it, deep down, they know, I want a different experience. I want a different outcome. I maybe believe that, but I want a different outcome. So first of all, know that you are in charge of any choices, any decisions that need to be made on the day, and you can ask questions. It doesn't matter that you are not a trained medical professional. You are the expert in this baby because you made this baby, right? So you're the expert, you're the parent. That's the first thing they need to know. They don't need to say yes to everything that gets thrown at them, because it will get thrown over them. We need to induce you. We need to speed up labor. This is taking too long. You're only 2 centimeters dilated. It is just standard practice. Doesn't mean you need to act on it. Be patient. And I also highly recommend that you just educate yourself and learn skills that help you to stay at home as long as you possibly can in labor. Okay? Because then you're in your safe bubble. In a safe bubble where labor can unfold beautifully, where no one is going to tell you how you should be doing things. You can connect to your intuition a lot easier than when you're in the room with people coming and going.
I have a wedding to attend, which you're aware of. And one of the things that you told me around labor, in terms of the early onset of it and when it's actually kicking, are two very different things, which really gave me peace of mind of I can get on the next flight and be back in time. But can you talk through that process? Because, as you said to us many times on the day, people think labor is on a lot earlier than it actually is on. So can you walk through what you see show up there?
Oh, my favorite topic, absolutely. So the most common challenge, I'm not going to say mistake, challenge that especially first-time parents have is that they're rushing to the hospital as soon as it gets a little intense. That is simply how we live as a society. The first sign of, I love calling it pain, yeah, it's good pain. First sign of pain, we need to fix it. Take a Panadol, fix it, stop it. First sign of labor getting more intense and painful, run to the hospital. What is it like in the movies? Usually her waters break, 5 minutes later she's screaming and they're rushing off to the hospital. This is actually not how it works. So often labor starts off easy peasy with contractions that feel like period cramps, or maybe in the lower back, and slowly but surely they get more intense, okay, over time. I love putting time frames on labor. I have met so many women who had somehow the belief that labor is going to be like that, just like checking Instagram twice. It's not how it works. Labor is not a quick sticks fix. Here's the baby. It takes days. And I remember I said to you and Shani a little while ago, during birth, the mum needs to leave her body and go to the stars to collect her baby's soul and bring her back to earth. Is that journey to the stars going to take 5 minutes? No, it's going to take a couple of days. It's a journey of letting go, okay? So coming back to your question, enjoy that first bit of labor where you're not sure, is this it? Is this labor or not? You don't need to call the midwife. As long as you feel safe and you can feel your baby, just enjoy it. Be at home, go to the beach, have yummy breakfast. Ignore it as long as you can. And maybe the next day it starts ramping up and you're like, oh, wow, now I need to get out all the tools that Anna taught me. Let's get them out. Let's start breathing. Let's start connecting to our inner selves. Let's start moving. Let's get the fit ball out. And dads start bringing up their affirmations and their pressure point techniques and the massage and all the things. And then you do that at home for another 12 hours or so. And when you feel like, okay, I really can't cope with it anymore, I just need to go now, I can't wait, then it's time to go. If dad thinks, should we go to the hospital, Shani? No, absolutely no way. Because Blake, you don't know. You don't know what Shani's feeling on the inside, right? So you can't decide. And men naturally have a tendency to want to save their loved one from harm, okay, and protect them. Okay, she's getting uncomfortable. Ooh, I don't feel good about this. She looks like she's in pain. I better save her. Let's take her to the hospital. But I know, I've talked about this before. We can't save her. She doesn't need saving. She's just going to go through this incredible transformation to motherhood. And if we take it away from her, then we have to go through that transformation later on, one way or another.
So on that, how do you, because this was really valuable for me as well, and before we speak to you on Thursday, we'll have our kind of birth plan and roles organised, but how do you see the roles of both the mother and the father in that kind of, say, 72 hours leading up to, and then obviously during and post as well? Because I think for blokes, I haven't seen a instruction manual on how to navigate this, but what does that role potentially look like for a bloke? Because this was really insightful for me when you voiced it to us.
So I always say to anyone who starts working with me, I always say to the mum, birth is going to be actually quite easy for you, because what we're going to do is you just need to learn to quieten your mind and soften your body and let it happen. And I will give you the tools how to do that. Looking at the dad, you're going to make a whole to-do list with all the things that you need. So let's look at some things that you're going to be doing. So anything obviously from keeping her hydrated, feeding her bits and pieces of the right food. So bits of bananas, dried apple, bliss balls, chocolate, keeping her moving, which means, all right, let's set you up on the birth ball. Then half an hour later, we're going to go to the toilet, empty your bladder. Then we're going to go over here and lie on our left-hand side a bit. So there's like a long list of jobs that you need to do. The most important role, in my opinion, that a dad has is to be the gatekeeper in the birth space. Whatever name you want to choose for yourself, bodyguard, bouncer, whatever you fancy.
Oh, gatekeeper, I like that a lot.
Oh, you like that. Great. Yeah. Okay. So you can be the gatekeeper. And what that looks like, literally, keeping the gate and the door at the hospital closed. Because imagine if the hospital door at your hospital is going to be open, you hear people coming and going, shouting outside, typing, okay, breakfast time for room 3. How do you think your partner is going to surrender to labor, which her only job is? So your job is to keep the bubble quiet, keep the music going, the fairy lights, keep the doctors outside, except when the midwife needs to come in every 20 minutes to check the heart rate. But any conversations that you and an obstetrician has can be held outside the room or just in the corner away from your birthing partner, okay? Because she can't drop into that birth space unless she's left alone. Okay.
That's valuable. I think you told me that, but it's a good reminder. All conversations away. That's a good piece.
Absolutely away. So let's quickly come back to our brain. So we have lots of different parts of our brain, but I just want to look at the upper and the lower, the thinking and the subconscious brain, okay? Conscious brain, thinking, analyzing, planning, adding up numbers. How much longer is this labor going to go? It's already been going for 8 hours. This is not going to get us through labor. So as the gatekeeper, your job is to let mum drop into that subconscious brain where she can just let go and go through the contractions. Because if she's in the thinking brain, answering the doctor's questions about pros and cons and alternatives, she can't go through birth. She's in her thinking brain. Oh God, okay, why is he saying that now? So your job, your main job, is to protect that space, keep it calm and safe, and talk to them away from mum.
I have a very random question for you and quite a controversial topic, which I don't give a fuck what side of the fence that you're on. So a mate who was being the gatekeeper for his partner during a recent birth said that clowns come around after the birth encouraging you to get your vaccines. Why do they choose a clown as a source of entertainment and potentially enticement to get you to do your vaccines? Have you heard of this? I'm guessing. I
Never heard of this.
Really? Okay, I just thought this was common knowledge, and I was like, "That's fucking weird."
God, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I'm not often speechless. I feel a bit speechless right now. That is like insane. I can't possibly think maybe to distract you and just sign the paper and say, yep, because again, whether you're vaccinated or not, that's none of my business and should be nobody's. It's just your decision, right?
100%.
But it's really hard to make those decisions when you are in that post-birth bubble. The oxytocin, all the hormones are flowing. So that's a decision you should be making probably prior to giving birth anyway, because it's hard to think and make choices straight after the birth. But again, coming back to what we said earlier, you know, they just need to tick the boxes, and one of their responsibilities on paper is to recommend that to you, given that they're working in the system, in a medical system, and they believe that that is essential for your child, whether you take it or not, clown or not. That is.
Is there any other decisions that you should? So that's a good decision for people to consider. Is there any other decisions that you think are worth having a conversation about pre-birth that they might kind of push on you quite quickly post-birth? And you know, to your point, you're in quite a interesting state and space. Is there anything that else needs to be considered from a grounded state pre-birth?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, so you might remember birth has 3 parts. The first one is where, you know, you're opening up your body. Then the second is you push the baby out. And the third one is where mum births her placenta. So this is something that couples often forget to think about. They're like, oh yeah, whatever, do whatever with the placenta. But you're aiming for a natural birth, drug-free birth, intervention-free birth. That means you also need to complete the birth, the third part of your birth, drug-free, natural, without intervention. So you do not need to have an injection in the hospital that forces your placenta to come out, okay? And this is something you need to decide prior to the birth, because otherwise you're just in la-la land straight after. So unless there are major concerns such as hemorrhaging, placenta coming out in bits and pieces, or it's simply not coming after 45 minutes or so, you don't need that injection. So do the research. Whether you want it or not, it's up to you, but do the research prior to giving birth. The other thing probably worth mentioning is the vitamin K shot that they have to offer you. You don't have to take it. It's supposed to prevent a rare bleeding disorder to the baby's brain. The likelihood of that happening is extremely low. Not saying you should or shouldn't do it, but do your research prior to that so that you don't have to deal with that right after the birth and be all like, oh, I don't care right now. I'm so happy with my baby. Do whatever you want.
All right, we've got it. Like, whatever decision you choose to make around vaccines is your choice. But I have to talk about this one, and that is Hep B. Now, as far as I'm aware, and please educate me if I'm wrong, you're going to get Hep B from probably one of 3 things: rough anal sex, tattoos, or sharing injections. Now, I'm open to potentially being educated if there's another way, but I don't imagine my daughter doing any of those things very early on. Have I missed something on this jab?
No,
Okay, cool.
I just love this so much. No, I was going to ask you before you carried on. I was going to ask you, what are you planning on doing with your daughter in the first kind of 6 weeks of her life? I was going to ask you, are you planning on exposing her to any of those, travel to crazy countries overseas or tattoos? So if the answer is no to that, then I think you've just answered your own question, whether you need that or not.
Yeah. I mean, she'll be a free spirit for sure, but I don't know that she'll be partaking in any of those in the early stages of her life. So we're good. Yeah.
Can't wait to talk to you when she's 18.
That might be a different conversation, my friend. That could be a different conversation. So for blokes, as we kind of start to wrap this up, what are the do's and don'ts? And we mean this in a very empowered way, but what are some of the things for us to consider as blokes who are the gatekeepers, who are really have got, as you said, taking the load of responsibility while mother does her duties and her job. But what do we need to consider? What are some of the do's and don'ts that potentially blokes might get wrong?
So I would definitely highly recommend you make a to-do list for yourself. Like I know you have a couple, Blake, because why that's so handy, in the heat of the moment, you have never done this before. It feels exciting, but it maybe feels also a little overwhelming and you're a bit nervous. It's hard to think what you should be doing. So have a list on the fridge, have another list in your hospital bag, okay? And write down all the things we talked about earlier, giving her water after every contraction, packing food, offering that to her. One of the big things I always say to my male clients, don't ever ask her questions, such as, honey, do you want water? How are you going? Is it painful? Do you need food? Would you like to go and do a wee now? Do you want to go in the shower? Because it's sending her in her thinking brain. She can't think in labor. Instead, what are you going to do? With a very gentle voice after the contraction, here's your coconut water. Try a little bite of banana. Nope. Okay, I won't do that. I'm going to try the pressure points on you right now. She says nothing. Sweet. Keep going. I remember once I supported a beautiful mum in birth, and I did the pressure points that I showed you, and I did it for what felt like hours. She said nothing. She didn't say, I love it, I hate it, nothing. So I kept going. Then my arms needed a break, and I stood up and she kicked me with full force like a horse backwards. She was on her knees. I'm like, whoa, okay, better go and do that. Mum says nothing, keep going. Okay, keep going. And just have that list nearby and go through the different techniques that you've learned in preparation for birth. Just because she tells you to fuck off and she hates the pressure points right now doesn't mean that she doesn't desperately want it 45 minutes later when your baby has turned inside her. Okay, so just keep going through and keep offering. And we don't know what it's going to be like on the day. I remember in one of my births, I had like the greatest plans, what my doula was going to do, and massage and music and everything was going to be so hands-on. No one was allowed to touch me. I'm like, don't you freaking touch me. The only thing that my husband was allowed to do is he was kneeling in front of me. I was in the pool. He was kneeling in front of me and I wanted to hold his strong arms. As soon as he tried to rub my shoulder, I would slap him. So just be really open-minded, guys. We don't know, she might be so lovey-dovey now, and when she's unwell, she just wants you to hold her and tell her a million times how amazing she is and everything. And here are the washes and here are little tickles on the shoulder, and she might not want to be touched. So my tip would be like, don't take it personal. This is not about you, okay?
It's an important time to remember that, guys. Don't take it personally. Don't make it about you.
Don't take it personally. And look, some women saying they I freaking hate you. I'm going to divorce you. That's okay. And other women are just like completely quiet going inwards. We don't know what your partner is going to be like, so don't take it personal.
I'd kind of like to see that part of Shani come out. She is a very love and light person. I'd love to see her get real fucking angry.
Oh,
who knows? Shadow work 101. No better time than a birth. We'll see.
Absolutely. You will be surprised. I know.
I'm excited for it. So Anna, for those that want to find out more about you and the work that you do, where's the best spot to send them?
So come to my Instagram, it's Anna Murray, and you can either book in for private classes with me. You can attend a group class with me, which is what you and Shani did, or I also have 3 and 6 month coaching if you're ready to do the shadow work, if you're ready to completely transform how you feel about birth, motherhood, parenthood, and life. I had a client say to me last week, she's like, oh my God, I had no idea this would be life-changing work. I could have saved so much money on therapy. So this is there, you know, it's there.
Wild. And guys, yeah, just as someone who is obviously at the back end of the 9 months, it's wild to think that people go through this process unsupported. And yeah, I know we've said it to you a number of times. We're super grateful for the day that we spent with you, but also the extra support that you've given us along the way as well.
Can't wait to see how it unfolds.